unless you're able to address these things on a regular basis, seasonally, you can end up with yesterday's vision, yesterday's dream, leading yesterday's people to yesterday's destination. Because the reality is, God is always on the move, and his call is a dynamic call, and the world in which we're living in right now is changing faster than we've ever changed. And so you had better continue to ask the question of yourself and God, is this still the right place at the right time with the right processes?
Hello, and welcome to the Shifting Culture podcast, in which we have conversations about the culture we create and the impact we can make. We long to see the body of Christ look like Jesus. I'm your host, Joshua Johnson. Our show is powered by you, the listener. If you want to support the work that we do, get early access to episodes, episode guides, and more, go to patreon.com/shiftingculture to become a monthly patron so that we can continue in this important work. And don't forget to hit the follow button on your favorite podcast app to be notified when new episodes come out each week. And go leave a rating and review. It's easy, it only takes a second, and it helps us find new listeners to the show. Just go to the show page on the app that you're using right now and hit 5 stars. It really is that easy. Thank you so much. You know what else would help us out? Share this podcast with your friends, your family, your network. Tell them how much you enjoy it and let them know that they should be listening as well. If you are new here, welcome. If you want to dig deeper, find us on social media at Shifting Culture Podcast, where I post video clips and quotes and interact with all of you. Previous guests on the show have included Pete Gregg, Jamie Winship, and Scott Rodin. You can go back, listen to those episodes, and more. But today's guest is Karl Martin. After 25 years of building organizations and teams to their potential, Karl Martin founded Arable in 2020 from his home surrounded by Scottish countryside and farmland. Taking inspiration from its surroundings, Arable creates and cultivates bespoke and winning ecosystems for leaders and organizations to grow and flourish. He coaches leaders from some of the biggest and most influential companies in the world, like Toyota, NBC Universal, X, formerly Twitter, Joe Gibbs Racing, Saatchi & Saatchi, just to name a few. He divides his time between the U.S. and Scotland. He is married to Nikki, and they have 4 grown daughters. I have seen a lot of bad leadership out there. I know that there is a better way, and a way to lead from all of who we are that builds people, gives voice to others, and empowers people in such a way that we can accomplish what God has entrusted us. In this conversation, Karl Martin talks about leading from a deeper place, leading from the soul. Through the framework of the cave, the quest of the true, the road, the way of the brave, the table, the art of the kind, and the fire, the pursuit of the curious, we can be wholehearted people that lead well. So join us as we enter the cave, the road, the table, and the fire. Here's my conversation with Karl Martin. Karl, welcome to Shifting Culture. Excited to have you on. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you. It's good to be with you.
Your new book, The Cave, the Road, the Table, and the Fire, I think is fantastic. The subtitle is Leading from a Deeper Place. So it's really about soul leadership, leading from your soul and moving out into the world. I know that probably this is not a fly by the seat of your pants work. This is pretty deep, and it is something that I would assume took a lifetime of learning for you.
Yes.
What was your individual journey to realizing that the soul is so important to leadership?
Yeah. I'm fascinating. I mean, I grew up in the church. My father was a pastor. I kind of did my little rebellion thing against I'm never doing that stuff. And I ended up leading a church for 25 years. And during that period of time, you know, it's like any kind of career, if you can call it a career, you have this, you know, moments when you're in the zone and it's flow, moments when you know exactly why you're there and what you're supposed to be doing, and moments when you're just putting one foot in front of another. And I guess what I learned over the period of time was that it's really easy to be the one at the front telling everyone the vision and sharing the concepts and ideas, and to lose a little bit of yourself in the process. And as I began to reflect on all of that stuff, I realized that this is the truth is the truth, right? It's universal, whether you have faith or don't have faith, that leadership is a person before it's ever a project or a process. And the health and quality of your personhood and therefore your leadership is essential for the organization and then for the culture around that organization. And unless you tend to it, unless you tend to your physical, emotional, spiritual health, then you end up in a place, usually accidentally, that you never meant to get to, which is pitching things that you're not sure you understand anymore, and losing a sense of self and soul in the process. So this book is really, I think it's essential for our moment. I think it's essential for the church's moment, but it was definitely essential for me to do some digging and say, what is truly going on here? And what is it feeling like to be the other side of me? And how can I address all causes in myself first before I start preaching at others?
Hmm. So if the project is you, the project is the leader, and we have to do that inner work before we have that strategy and vision and move forward. Because if we don't do that inner work, that strategy is going to get all messed up and screwed up, and it's going to veer off in different directions.
Yeah.
What does it look like then to start out, to do that work of the self, to go deep inside, which I think you start with the cave, the quest of the true. Yes. What is it like to start to go deep in there?
I guess the things that you are aware of, you have choices around. The things that you are unaware of control you. So it starts with self-awareness. It starts with saying, what is it really like to be me? What is it really like to strip off the masks that I use to play the games that I play, to be comfortable in my own skin, aware of who I truly am before God, and then to play the role that I'm supposed to play. One of the exercises I talk about in the book is very simple, as I think everything should be, but it's an exercise about getting to godly impact. And I think it has a ladder approach to it. I think if you can't start with honesty, you'll get nowhere. And honesty is, if you truly knew me, Joshua, if you knew everything I ever thought and everything I ever did, we wouldn't be talking right now. You wouldn't want to know, you wouldn't want me to lead you, because we're all broken. We live in a broken world and we're totally broken. The counter and equal truth is we're all beautiful. In fact, that's the greater truth. We're created in the image of a God who loves us and is for us, and the potential in us is huge. Starting from that place of deep honesty and saying, this is who I am, before we ever start putting masks on and showing up in different ways. And then, of course, honesty ladders up into humility. Humility, I think, counter to what most bumper sticker preachers will tell you, humility is not thinking less of yourself or even thinking of yourself less. It's thinking correctly about yourself. This is Romans 12. Do not think of yourself more highly than you ought, but think of yourself with sober judgment. And then Paul goes on to describe all the gifts. If you're a leader, lead. If you're a helper, help. All these things. In other words, humility is thinking correctly about yourself. It's getting to a place of centeredness and saying, I am brilliant at these things, and I'm absolutely crap at these things. And I'll probably carry some of that throughout my life. And then that is up into wisdom. We're living in a world where knowledge is free because of this, effectively, which isn't a whole other conversation that we can have. But wisdom is rare. And I think, Joshua, that wisdom in its simplest form is, what is mine to do because of who God made me to be? What is someone else's to do, and therefore I ought to bud out and equip them? And then what is God's to do, because only God can do that. And I think if you follow that process and begin to think through, who am I, what am I for, how am I supposed to be experienced, you end up with the kind of impact that you really want. But of course, if you just try and have impact without those things, you end up with nefarious impact.
Yes.
That was a long response.
No, I like long responses. That's good. And I think that nefarious impact, we're seeing that all over, that we're not going to the deep part of ourselves and knowing who we truly are. And it's a long process to really find out who I am as a person. I've, my whole life, early on in my career, I've masked up. I've tried to be a chameleon in different spots. I've tried to find my identity and value in my relation to other people and how I stack up other people. And it wasn't until I've done that deep work of, okay, let's strip those things away and uncover what God says about me and who I truly am and what he has put inside of me. So we're influenced by the people around us and stacking ourselves up. But most of that is my inner self-talk that is like bringing me down.
Yep.
How do I start to disrupt the self-talk that I have been growing up with, and then move towards a different way of thinking and a new way of thinking so that I could live into a better space?
I need some more time. Can I get more time? Can anyone get more time? Is that a thing? I would like to spend more time being a husband, a dad, neighbor, coworker. I want to spend more time on my faith. I want to be good at my job and not waste time at my job. I want to go down the wrong path fewer times or go down the right ones first. I want to learn how to make more time. This is Making Time, a series where I try to make more time. Time for the good stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're right. I think, in the book, I'm a complete geek for personality profiles and tests, and I love them, but I think none of them are the truth. They're all lenses. They're all ways of seeing yourself, which can be helpful until it becomes your label. You're not an ENFP or a red yellow thingy or a 3 with a 2 or what you are not that. You are way more than that. It's way more complex than that. But you might be much more the experiences that you've had, the wounds that you carry, the beliefs that you imbibed, whether you filtered them or not, the influences that the voices that were spoken into your life and continue to speak into your life. I think there's a lot of fertile ground for working out how you show up in those kind of conversations. And, I just wanted to go back to one of the things you said earlier, Josh. I totally believe you have to do your work, but I more than that, I believe you have to be doing your work, because I feel like, we have this mantra where go do your work and now you can go lead and you're fine, right? You got the wound healed and you got the thing said over you that you reject. Now you're good. The problem is that all the good stuff leaks out of us, and all the pressures of the world that we're in right now are greater than I think they've ever been for leaders. And so we have to, it's like a dynamic process, which is why I wrote The Cave, the Road, the Table, and the Fire, because that becomes a daily rhythm and pattern for us to get centered and right so that we might continue to be the project. So I do think, it does involve some deep searching and some digging, and why do I believe that, and is it true? Where did that overreaction come from? Why am I triggered by that kind of person? Why do I tend to overswing, react against yesterday's dysfunction with today's equal and opposite dysfunction? Why do I do that? What's going on in my life? Because the moment we become aware of what we do and even call it a name and sometimes even laugh at it, is the moment it loses some of the hold over us and power. And then we can begin to go, this is that. And now I'm taking responsibility for what I do with that. So that's part of the process.
And then, as we're doing that, we're finding out what is true, who we are, our soul, and we're starting to lead out of that. We move into daily. What is our road? What is ours to have? What's the bag that is ours, right?
Yeah.
To carry.
You really read the book, Josh.
I have read the book, Karl. I've dug into the book, and I'm going to go back, and I'm going to probably read the book with other people, and we're going to go through it because it's fantastic. It's really good. So I think what is ours to carry, to move, and it's the way of the brave.
Yeah.
And I think, fear is the thing that holds us back a lot. Courage, bravery to move into the road space.
Yeah.
I think is really important. How do we start to figure out, okay, this is mine to carry. Yeah. That's not mine. I could put that down, let other people deal with it, or that's nobody's to carry. And or this is the thing I need to give to God.
Yeah, that's good. Well, I think the first way to address this is the concept that passivity is the enemy of everything good in your life. So the concept of I can just sit here, let go, let God, that humility drives me into a space where things can happen at me is a recipe for non-leadership. It's a recipe for abdication, and it's a recipe for actually ultimately not being true to who God called you to be and how God called you to operate on this planet. So you have to acknowledge that you got to move. One of the illustrations that I use is very simplistic, but you cannot steer a car that is stationary. Try moving the wheel, right? The moment it's moving, it becomes very easy, particularly if it's got power steering, right? And so suddenly you can move the thing. So the first thing is you've got to move. You've got to move. Now, the direction you move in, and once again, this is dynamic, but I use a very simple triangle illustration where I talk about 3 points that you're trying to triangulate. What moves you, what fits you, and what fills you. And the movement piece is really dreams and complaints. What gets you out of bed in the morning? What keeps you up at night? It's designed to enable what you do to be meaningful. What do I do beyond just showing up to work and getting a paycheck? What fits you is about working out. What do I do better than 100 people I know? Now, fascinatingly, when I coach people in the UK, they have to ask 10 friends that question, right? In the US, they've got 10 answers, right? I do this better, I do that better, I do the next thing better. And that's designed to be quite forensic and say, so because I want to get to your unique contribution. I don't just want to get to things you're pretty good at. I want to get to why are you on this planet? And then, of course, the piece that we often miss, particularly in corporate America, we miss off to our detriment, is what fills us. Because you don't want just something to be just meaningful and useful. You need it to be sustainable. So if I can't show up to work or to life or to church or to whatever I feel God's calling me to and find a deep joy in it, which doesn't mean, by the way, that every day I'm happy. That's not the point. It's just if I can't find a deep joy in what I'm doing that fills me up, then it's not going to be sustainable. I'm going to quit pretty quickly, or at least I'm going to quit in my heart. It's about finding. And by the way, that the centering point is not a point. It's not a needle in a haystack. It might be the haystack, because the will of God is both dynamic and permissive. So what I put into that circle, my purpose statement, if you like, or my unique contribution, it changes. It's not the same as it was a year ago or 5 years ago, because I change and the world changes. So it's designed to say what's that thing you're shooting for, and then it's designed to say, well, if that becomes my yes, how do I defend it with 1,000 no's?
How do you deal with a changing purpose? Say my unique contribution is different than it was 5 years ago.
Yep.
How do we know that we're dynamic and we change, and say we're still leading the same organization, or we're in the same position?
Yeah.
What changes when we change? on the inside, and our purpose and our contribution shifts.
Yeah. Well, I'm not 100% sure what changes, but I do know this, that unless you are able to have these conversations, unless you're able to address these things on a regular basis, seasonally, you can end up with yesterday's vision, yesterday's dream, leading yesterday's people to yesterday's destination. Because the reality is, God is always on the move, and his call is a dynamic call, and the world in which we're living in right now is changing faster than we've ever changed. And so you had better continue to ask the question of yourself and God: is this still the right place, the right time, with the right processes? And you will have seen them. I think it's called the sigmoid curve, the way in which an organization, grows, and then plateaus. I think God understood that way before Mr. Sigmoid, if he's even a person, probably isn't a person, before anyone else recognized that. And I think that's why there are seasons. I think that's why there are 7 years of this and 7 years of that and another 7 years of the other. And, I feel like too many people stay doing the same old things because they haven't asked themselves some really deep questions around the call of God on their life at this moment in time. It becomes very easy for them. They get into a comfort zone, they get into a groove, and they're not willing to be disrupted or to disrupt the system in order to get to the next thing that the Lord is calling them to.
As you're coaching people, then how do you bring that disruption for them to deal with these things and to wrestle with it?
I just shout at them a lot, Joshua. No. Well, no, I think generally people know, right? And the brave thing is coming face to face with reality. And most people don't want a coach, and don't want accountability, and don't want a team of elders or leaders around them asking them these kind of questions, because they're uncomfortable questions. But we also know that the way we've grown in our life is through discomfort and failure. In other words, you cannot grow in a comfort zone. You can heal in a comfort zone, and you can rest in a comfort zone. They're good and helpful places to be for those things. But part of the call of God on our life is for us to grow, is for us to increasingly become the person that is mathesis, isn't it? Discipleship. Increasingly become the person, walk with Jesus, look like Jesus. And so if that's true, that only really happens in what psychologists call liminal space. It happens in off-balance space. It happens in threshold space, where we're moving from one concrete reality into another concrete reality. And so sometimes that's forced upon us. Pandemic, you get fired, someone dies. But when it is not being forced on us, we have to force it upon ourselves if we really want to grow. So you have to put yourself in places, which is why I'm always asking my clients, what are you reading that you disagree with? Who are you listening to that you find heretical? Because otherwise you're basically living in an echo chamber, and we're just reinforcing our own sometimes dysfunctional ideas and thoughts about something. Do we trust God? Do we trust ourselves? And do we trust the process of what God is taking us through to shake us a little bit? And I think that's true actually about leadership as a whole. I think the way in which is, once again, why I've written a book, the way in which we have thought about leadership and done leadership is broken. Our leadership has been proven to be broken again and again and again. It's not just that we suddenly know that people have behaved badly in leadership. It's that there seems to be increasing amounts of people falling and have fallen, which tells us something is broken. So we have to ask ourselves some really uncomfortable questions, which become very personal about how we're leading and what we're thinking about leadership.
Are you looking for peace and joy? Do you want to refresh your life and raise your well-being? you need Create Harmony. At Create Harmony, we focus on everyday joys and we savor life's blessings. Our episodes are filled with creativity and fun, and we believe in setting an intentional rhythm. Listen in to Create Harmony to learn how to use your imagination as a way of listening to God and remind yourself how to notice goodness all around you.
I think a lot of people, when they think of a leader or they think of, a top leader in places, or you think of you as an executive coach and you're coaching, top level executives around the world. You also have people in your life that pour into you and you're receiving from others.
Yeah.
So as we lead, what's the importance of receiving as well? That we're not just leading from, the books that we read or, the podcasts that we listen to, but we actually have people walking with us.
Yeah. Well, if you don't, you become intellectually and spiritually obese. If you're not pouring yourself into somebody, you're just being filled. So it's this kind of constant dynamic where, I talk in the book about 3 people you need in your life. Someone you sit at the feet of, someone who's walked further than you, someone who you give permission to say, tell me how it is, tell me what I should be doing, tell me. So it's sometimes even less of a coach and more of an advisor or a consultant. I need a consultant in my life. Someone would say, Karl, what are you doing? You don't know how to run a business. Do it this way. You need people you look in the eye of. So I need friends who know me completely and can call me an idiot when I'm being an idiot, and I won't punch them in the face, because we have that kind of relationship. And then you need people you pour yourself into, which otherwise you become obese because people are pouring themselves into you, and you need to be able to have that cycle happening in your life. But I think more than that, Joshua, I think the posture of curiosity, the posture of every day is a school day. Everything can be learned from. I'm not the finished product. The day I stop learning will be the day I die. Is so profound and such a humble approach that I think it would, in and of itself, and there are plenty of other things that we need to do. In and of itself, it's a significant answer to some of the leadership crisis we face right now.
Yep. Yeah, that's really good. Well, let's move into the table and the way of the art of the kind is what you call it, right? Mm. So what is sacred? What is kindness? What is connection at the table? And what does it look like to then have the people, the pack that we're running with, to pour into them at a table and to have it dynamic? And it's not just, one into many, but there's a table in front of us.
Yeah. Well, there's something very vulnerable about sitting at a table and just breaking bread. It's not just the Christian tradition that believes that. It's a human nature thing. It's the way we're created. The fact that I can break bread with my enemies, the fact that I can drink wine with my friends. It's a very leveling environment where I'm not standing on a stage telling people what to think. I'm sitting at a table and we're having a conversation. By the way, you don't need a table for that. I totally believe that's the best way to communicate anyway. When I was leading a church, we rearranged everything to be in the round. And, we had a very large congregation and we had everyone staring at each other, not just because it was cool and lots of people were doing it, but because this is a conversation that we are having with one another. And the art of great communication is, it's not about me telling you what I think and you responding to that. It's about me getting in the middle of the conversation you are having with yourself and being able to help you interpret it. And so the table is very much that. It's how do we have how do we create a safe place to have dangerous conversations that could really change the trajectory of our lives? And how do we create a band of brothers and sisters where we can talk about things that are meaningful for us? And, I talk a lot about it in the book, so.
Well, that reminds me of your support challenge matrix.
Yeah.
As we're leading teams, you're having safe places to have dangerous conversations. You're challenging to move out, to be brave, and to get there. And then we have some support and care. What does that look? What's that matrix, and what does that look like?
Well, it's very simple, and it's been used by multiple people, so I can't claim it's mine, but I use it a lot, and I find it really helpful in almost every space. It's just a matrix of support and, support and challenge. High support and high challenge is the box that we're trying to aim for. It's where all great parenting happens. It's where all great leadership happens. And, of course, it's where Jesus operates, right? So John chapter 1, Jesus came full of grace and truth, high support, high challenge. And his discipling of his followers, his leadership, was always those two things together at the same time. It's never truth unless it's grace truth, and it's never grace unless it's truth grace. And it's always this calibration between, come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, go into all the world, preach and teach and make disciples. And it's this kind of dynamic. And the truth is the truth is the truth. That's how you grow a great team. That's how you grow a great organization. And, and the problem is that most organizations don't operate there. I use a little thing in the book where I talk about the fact that the word company means breadfellow, from the original Latin and then French. And there's something really powerful about the people who really experience the calibration between support and challenge, grace and truth, safe and stretch, are the people who are truly able to be vulnerable enough to sit with one another and to break bread. It's a true company. And so that's what we're operating. And I get people to work out where they operate as a leader, the journey they need to make, and,
So what is the journey? So if we're a comfortable, safe, supporting organization, but we're not taking many risks and we're not, moving towards the challenge, for people in that space right now, what is the journey to get into an empowering organization?
Well, you need to recognize that the straight shot is never a shot you can take. You can't take a straight road from a culture of protectionism and high support and almost no challenge. The moment that you raise any challenge, it feels like you lowered support, right? And so then people, want to go back to Egypt because we had garlic and onions in Egypt because it's really hard in the desert, right? And the truth is that you didn't lower support. You just gave them metrics. You said there are goals here. You said you have to show up at certain times. And when I asked you to deliver something, you have to deliver it. By the way, that's also kind, because clear is kind. You've given them boundaries and you said, this is what it looks like to operate in our organization. I'm growing you. I'm helping us get to the promised land. And so the challenge is it's a journey, and it's a journey people don't want to take because it becomes difficult. People don't like change. No one likes change. The only people who like, you only like the change you like, right? You only like the change you institute. Any change that comes at you, go, I don't like that. It's difficult. So it looks like that. And of course, the reverse is true if you're in a toxic, driven environment where it's all about results. You in order to get to the promised land, you have to raise support. You have to help people feel loved and included. And the truth is, that's going to feel sucky for a time because we used to get things done around here. And now we stop on a Friday for beer and pizza. What even is that, But it's a strategic plan to get you to a better place. It's kindness. It's a kindness for you, the organization, and for the return on investment. It's just that's the reality of it.
That's good. It's a journey, and we could And we could step into that and you could help people. What does the group dynamics at the table look like? What does it look like for, people having dangerous conversations? If you say the table is for a safe place for dangerous conversations, how does a leader or someone facilitating those conversations help bring about fruitful conversation and not detrimental conversation where it just evolves into polarization and argument and disarray?
Yeah. With difficulty.
Yeah.
Really, because we're living in a polarized world where everything that you get on here is pushing you towards an extreme in the way in which you think, and everything is being fed to you as an echo chamber. So you're being continually driven in the direction of your current thinking. So it's very rare, which makes it very important that we have tables where people have different views. Because if you cannot, it's why cancel culture is so understandable and toxic. If we can't have a divergent and maybe even offensive view and air it, we push that view underground. No one can air it in public. It cannot be honed, corrected, pushed back on. People can't learn. There's no redemptive conversation that can happen. And so we push people further and further and further to the edges of our culture and our society. So that was a bit part conversation, but this skill and art of laying a table, the skill and art of curating great questions, the skill and art of listening to listen, as opposed to just listening to respond and make a better point. Creating a framework which enables freedom, because freedom happens within frameworks. So I talk about no soapboxes. You might have a strong opinion, but you're not here to preach and tell us 7 reasons why this is true. No experts. I don't need anyone saying, well, I've studied this in 17 different ways and therefore this is the answer, because it just shuts down debate and conversation. And no conclusions. We're not here when we create a table for a conversation, we're not here to say, although it's very tempting to put a bow on it and say, therefore we agree, these 3 things are true, and then we're all going to all behave in this way. No, trust the process, trust the people, and trust the conversation. So yeah, there need to be some rules about the way in which but the art of it is really about the leadership of the table. How do I create an environment that's comfortable enough that allows for free flow conversation and doesn't shut down people or belittle them? Because if you do that once, you've done it forever. They will feel that way forever.
And if we walk through that and we get into the fire, the pursuit of the curious and curiosity, reflection, examining what has been happening.
Yeah.
What's the fire conversation for us and the curiosity that we need to instill?
Yeah. So I think the fire conversation is my attempt at helping those who may or may not have faith to practice something akin to the examine. How do I examine this day and glean from it the things I need to glean, dismiss the things that need dismissed, and take into tomorrow the things that are valuable to me into the world? One of the statements I make is every experience that remains unprocessed stays unlearned. So good, bad, or ugly, if I'm not able to process it, I am in danger of groundhog, rinse and repeat days. So I don't grow. My day becomes a never-ending circle of true, brave, and kind, maybe, but it never becomes truer, braver, and kinder because I don't employ curious. Why did I think that? Why am I offended by that? Why did I behave in that way? What did I learn from today? How can I build on that? So it really is a reflection. It may be a journaling. The fire, I think, is a profound symbol because maybe this is just me. Maybe it's particularly male. I don't know, but there's something about
it. Might be particularly male, but
I think it could be. But there's something about the fact that when we're not looking in the whites of one another's eyes, but we're poking a fire or opening a barbecue or standing shoulder to shoulder rather than face to face, there is truth that comes out of us, which if we can really apply that truth, they become force multipliers for us. It can catalyze something incredibly good for us. So the fire is an attempt to kind of wrap the day up and learn and grow from it.
Mm. So then take us into a day. Then how do we utilize the cave, the road, the table, and the fire each day?
Yeah, I've tried to be non-prescriptive, but to give descriptions. So, and the reason for that is I don't think we are products. We're not labels. We're all very different, and we have different. My wife is fantastic in the evenings. Don't try and get us to do much. Don't try and engage a challenging conversation with her at 7 o'clock in the morning, right? Whereas I'm the opposite, right? I wake up and I'm go. In the evening, you might not get much sense out of me. And so we're all individual. We have different ways of operating. My play is that if you don't face yourself first thing in the morning and get ahead of the day will get ahead of you. So, your day will move in the direction of your thoughts, because that's the way the brain works and operates. So I wake in the morning and I attempt to get ahead of my day. Who am I? What am I for? Let's remind myself of truth. If you're a believer, you want to be in the scriptures and you want to be in prayer. If you're not, you still need to be cognizant of the fact that if you don't get ahead of this day will dictate to you what happens in your day. So the cave is a chair for me. It's a chair. When I'm in Scotland, it's a chair by a log burning stove overlooking a vast garden. When I'm in Dallas, it's a desk in my bedroom. The road is an alarm for me. It's an interruption. It's a disruption. It's because however good you were in the cave, this world and its thought patterns are invidious, and its busyness and its hurry, that they come at you. And it's very rare that I'm not distracted from my cave affirmation by the time I get to midday. So that it's really just an arresting and an attempt for me to respond rather than react to what comes at me. The table is just, I don't want to live my life with a plate on my lap watching a screen. I want to live my life curating the space between those who I'm doing life with. And so it's an attempt at some point in the day, usually towards the end of the day, to be able just to process the day. What was good, what was bad, what did you learn? And just to listen. And, nothing, in the words of my 22-year-old daughter, nothing that deep. It's not that deep, Dad. Which is usually her response to me when she's done something that she thinks is really deep, or she thinks I'm over-exaggerating or dramatizing. It's not that deep. But, it really isn't that deep. It's just an attempt to create and hold the space for the kind of conversations that could be helpful. And then the fire is whatever it needs to be. But it is, if I'm at home in Scotland, it might be a hardwood fire in the grate, or it could be a fire pit on the hill, or it might just be, a journal opened up and 3 thoughts scribbled down, and a resolve to do something about something that I experienced during that day. But it is a way to wrap the day up and not allow it to just accidentally bleed into tomorrow.
Now, as I was on a walk reflecting on your book and leadership of the soul, I think I was thinking about poor leadership, and poor leadership looks like, hey, I'm going to challenge people. I'm the head leader. I'm going to challenge them. We're going to go on this road. Things are going to come at us. We're going to be frenetic, and we're going to get after it. And then, the table would just be a group of people trying to do what I want them to do.
Yep.
And then to get them in different spaces.
Yep.
And I don't see a lot of the cave and the fire in poor leadership. I don't see the pursuit of truth, of leading out of who we are, who God has called us to be and instilled in us, and the fire of examining what's happening today, being curious about how to move in different ways. And so those two elements provide a space for us to live in the world and a place for us to live in the world, which I really, really appreciate going deeper into those aspects of what it looks like to live out from your soul. Those were fantastic frameworks to think through.
Well, there's someone that I think you may know called John Peterson, who once visited me, and I was in the middle of a relative existential crisis about my leadership. And this was probably 10 years ago. And he did what he would always do. He said something like, "You're right on time. You're right on time." And I think what he was talking about, and I've used this quite a lot with a number of the clients that I coach. I think there are two seasons of a leader's life. Season number one, where you learn to be a parent to children. In other words, where you learn to be a leader who creates a followership. You create 1,000 followers. You have an idea and a vision and a plan. This is a good season, by the way. It's not a bad season. You know what you're doing. You know what you're going after. You call people around you. You gather people around you. And they want to be a little like you, and they want to follow you. They become, if you like, your disciples. But season number two is when you learn to be a father to father or a parent to parents. And so instead of growing 1,000 followers, you grow 1,000 leaders. Now, to my mind, that's when you get into really healthy leadership. My job is not to be Aragorn, it's to be Gandalf, right? My job is not to take everyone's, ring to Mount Doom. My job is to equip as many people as possible to run with their ring, to go after their stuff. And if you start posturing yourself in that way, it's very difficult to imagine doing that from being the one always on the stage, or from being the one always with the answer, or for being the one making statements rather than asking questions. My job is to release everyone else into their best leadership life. And that I think that's a posture that we miss an awful lot in the leadership journey. But I don't know how you have that posture unless you have an eternity perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. It's really good, and it's necessary and needed. So as you're fathering fathers, you're parenting parents, if you're coaching executive leaders, top executive leaders, can you give me an example of how this framework has helped shift the culture of an executive leader and their team and their organization?
Yeah. Well, I won't name any names, but it's fascinating to me that exactly the same, that this stuff is fractal. I gave this book to someone. I was quite nervous about giving the book to someone who didn't really didn't have the same faith that I have. Let's put it that way. And I thought they would really dislike the book. Too kind of soulish. They loved it, and now read it twice, recommending it to a whole bunch of other people. But they came on a call with me and said, "This isn't a leadership book." And I was like devastated. I spent 3 years writing a leadership book. No, he said it's a book about being a great person. This is a book, and I realized actually that's true, but it's fractal, right? If you create great people, they become great leaders. Leadership is the greatest human gift. The ability to influence yourself and influence others for good. The greatest thing that the Lord has gifted us with is the ability to do that. If you create great leaders, you create great teams, healthy teams. If you create healthy teams, you create healthy organizations. And if you have healthy organizations, you end up making a dent in the culture around you. So it's totally fractal, and it works whether you're leading in a large automobile manufacturing company or a media company or the Church of Jesus Christ, or just as an individual trying to lead their family. It works because these universal qualities are the qualities of great people and the qualities of great leadership. And so it's fascinating that when we ladder this up to what it looks like to be a great team, we talk about trust. truth and integrity and authenticity builds trust. Let's talk about trust. Trust is the currency of teams, great teams. We talk about purpose. So, a brave ladders up to purpose. What are we for? What are we shooting at? What's the greatest imaginable challenge for us? We talk about kindness and connection. So and that's the one that I felt would not land, and lands all over the place. It's fascinating. And then curiosity. Well, it's creativity, it's development, it's how do we develop our people? It's how is every day a school day for us as an organization? How do we not become stagnant? And I'm finding that these things land again and again and again with people. And, it is fascinating sitting in boardrooms, having conversations about what trust really is and whether you trust one another, and that you can't really trust one another unless you know the color of each other's sofas. So let's talk about family and finding people actually removing the false barriers between my work life, my home life, my spiritual life, it's just a life. And I think that's, this is going to sound grandiose, but I think it is the potential of changing the way in which we think about what we do for most of our life. And I think it has the potential of creating a new generation of leaders. One of the things that we're doing with Arable is starting a foundation of 501c3, because I desperately want to teach these truths to the 15, 16, 17, 20-year-olds. Because we don't do it. We don't teach leadership. Leadership should be the first thing on the agenda at every school. How do I lead myself? How do I lead other people? And we allow it to be accidentally caught by people at a stage when they need it later on in their careers. So I want that to be happening throughout our world, because I think Jesus is perfect leadership.
Yeah. My dad started a Christian school district in the Seattle area. And one of the things that he started is impact leadership. And so it's all about teaching leadership for those young kids. So I know my dad's listening right now because he listens to every episode of this podcast. But this, I think, would be fantastic for the young kids to be able to walk through that. And I'm thankful for people like my dad, who has said, hey, it's important that we teach these things to young people so that we can have a different world, that our civilization can be different and changed, and that there could be, as you talked all the way at the beginning of your book, that our character can change the civilization, what is etched upon us as we lead from our soul. So yeah, I love this, and I'm thankful that people are going to take it and run with it, and hopefully you could be able to teach it to young people like that. That would be fantastic.
I'd love that.
Really good. One of the things that I was wondering about within leadership as stability within uncertainty, because that's our world right now. Our world is very uncertain, and we're scared, and so we're dealing with people's fears. We're dealing with uncertainty. We're dealing with frenetic things coming at us all the time, and we have to be adaptable. As you said early, the culture is fast, and we have to shift and change. What do you think this has to say to our uncertain culture, and how we can walk through it together through a healthy leadership?
Yeah. Well, a stack of things. And the thing that comes to mind, top of mind, is people cannot come to peace by forcing people to come to peace. You can't give someone peace. Only, the scripture, Jesus can, right? But I can't give you peace. If you're in the moment of dreadful uncertainty about your life, your career, your family, or whatever else, because of this volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous world that we're living in right now, which, by the way, is not going to get any calmer, it's going to become busier and more chaotic. How do I help you get to peace? I don't help you get to peace by announcing hope, which is what I think we do very often for good reason. Christian leaders are the worst at this, by the way. Don't worry, God's still on the throne. Pandemic, no one panic. We're going to come out of this better than we ever did. Well, who gave you the right to say that, right? And all you did when you said that is you drive people into loss and fear in a greater way because they don't believe you. And so I think what we can offer people is presence, pace, and honesty as we walk with them through the changes that are happening. I think the incarnation of the changes. Honesty is we're going to lose some things because of this. I have no idea where this is going to get to, but I can tell you this. I do believe God is still on the throne, and I will walk with you through this. Yeah, you're afraid because everything is upside down right now. So am I, by the way, because I don't know how this plays out. And then there comes a moment, I think, for you, Joshua, when you walked through the most difficult crises in your life, when you thought everything was just finished. And then you wake up one morning and suddenly it's not that the circumstances change, but it's going to be okay. Oh, I think it's probably going to be okay. You came to peace. And not because I told you to come to peace, but because I gave you the space to come to peace. So I think that's where leaders are more like parents than we allow ourselves to talk about in this world. And we just got to hold space for people's change and to walk with people through it. So yeah, volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. You want to create stability, but please don't do it by being dishonest in that process.
That's helpful. That's good. If you had one hope for your readers that would read your book, what would be your hope that they would get from this?
I honestly, all I'm hoping to do is catalyze a conversation with themselves. I just want people to stop. I argue in the book that busy is not our problem. Busy is the world's problem. I don't see busy changing. If you have children, if you have a job to do, if you have a calling of God, if you have passion for things, busy is going to be your life, right? Busy when they're married to hurry becomes the problem. So creating margin to be able to have the kind of conversations that this would provoke you into if you allow yourself to stop could be the difference between unhealthy leadership and healthy leadership. And, it's not, this book isn't the be all and end all. There are many other books out there that will do that, but it is the intentional pause and breathe that allows for a reset of purpose and value, and the courage to look at yourself in the mirror and go, really? Is this what it's come to? Yeah, that's what I'm hoping.
Well, Karl, I have a couple quick questions I'd like to ask at the end. One, if you go back to your 21-year-old self, what advice would you give?
I would not be so anxious to get ahead according to the standards that I had imbibed from the world around me. And I would think carefully about what I thought success was. Because I'm a highly competitive person, and I think I was too obsessed with winning. But I had no idea what winning was. And so, yeah, I think I would have done some of the things that I'm encouraging myself to do right now much earlier.
That's good. Anything you've been reading or watching lately you could recommend?
I'm reading everything. I'm reading everything I can on the Enneagram. Not because I think it's truth, but because I'm fascinated by understanding where my motives come from, where my drivers come from, why I tend to certain reactions to things. So Beatrice Chestnut is what I'm reading at the moment on the Enneagram. Anything by John Mark Comer I find fascinating as well.
Yeah, it's fantastic. That's good. How can people go out, get your book? How can people connect with you? Where would you like to point people to?
Website, arablecode.com. You can find out a little bit more about us, and you can buy this on Amazon, in the US, although it's slightly slow to get delivered right now. But if you're in the UK, you can get it from Waterstones or Amazon there as well.
Awesome. Well, Karl, thank you for this conversation. Thank you for bringing us through the cave, the road, the table,
Thanks,
and
Joshua.
the fire. I really, really enjoyed it. So thank you so much.
I've loved it. Bless you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you want to see more episodes like this, go to patreon.com/shiftingculture and become a monthly patron of the show. You can help us produce more episodes so that we can see the body of Christ look more like Jesus. If you become a patron on patreon.com/shiftingculture, you will get early access to episodes. You will get episode guides. You will get bonus shows, hopefully, and more. So go to patreon.com/shiftingculture and become a monthly patron. Also, leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. It really helps us out and helps us find new listeners to the show. And just go and share this podcast with your friends, your family, your network, people that you think would enjoy it as well. Thank you again for listening to the show. I hope you have a great week.